All right, welcome to the second video for the voltage limiter from RT Engineering. So you can see we've got the limiter attached to the back side of an instrument cluster. For power, we decided to, let me get a pen here. So we broke the solder trace here that goes to the 12 volts input to the gauge. So this is no longer going to have 12 volts to power the voltage limiter. That now goes to the ignition side there, and then the output is going to the A side of both temperature and the fuel gauge. And here is the fuel gauge sender input, and then here is the temperature sender input. And just to sort of dispel some rumors, because there are a lot of people that think they're experts and they're not, that if you have good temperature gauge and not a fuel gauge, your voltage limiter is doing its job. It's supplying the 5 volts to these two posts, okay? Only when you have no temperature and no fuel will it most likely be your limiter. There's a chance that both the sender and on the temperature and the fuel gauge could be bad, but that's highly unlikely. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have one or the other, chances are the limiter is working just fine. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put 12 volts to this pin here. That is our 12 volts input for the cluster. Okay. And then this is the sender, and we're just going to clip onto that because it's a second pin, so we're not going to get that. We don't want to get that close. And then what we'll do is we'll ground it, and we're just going to kind of turn this over, let it rest on the speedometer head there. See if we can't get the whole thing in the shot, and then we'll have to ground it. So now the white sender lead goes to the fuel sender. 12 volts comes into the gauge, and then there's our sender. So when we turn this on here, and you can kind of see we're probably halfway maybe on the sender there, and that guy there starts to move, and I don't know if we've stopped. Let's see, let's go to full. So one of two things I think are the real culprit when you don't have a power problem. Two things are not linear. Either these new aftermarket fuel senders are not linear, or the fuel gauges themselves have just gotten old over time. So now we are at full, and we are just about full here, looking pretty good. All right. So we're going to kind of go back almost to, I think, where we were before. And we'll see if we go to half or if we go past that. And it's still going down. Maybe it's going to stop right there for half. And I'm pretty sure we got a pretty good ground there. So, you know, we were there before, and I want to say that our needle wasn't really pointing in any really good spot. But anyway, you kind of get the point there. You know, at least you see something, right, which is good. So I think we maybe have stabilized there. Let's see. We go down a little bit further. Yeah, so that's saying 1/4 of a tank, which if you look at the float and the level, you know, but it's a pretty deep tank, and we're getting a little bit less than that, so that's kind of good. So at least this thing would be able to tell you, you know, when you were actually getting low on fuel rather than nothing, which of course nothing is horrible. So anyway, guys and gals, and we'll turn this off, and I'll just kind of flip it back over again here. So you can kind of see once again, you can do a few different things. You can take your fuel gauge apart, isolate the 12 volts here. You can do that if you want. You can put a sleeve over this. You can put a piece of heat shrink so nothing touches. And then what you have to do is just take a Teflon washer, and then you can put an eyelet like this over it, and then screw it down, and then you're not you're only getting the 12 volts that you supply from your power supply. If you wanted to do that, not really recommended. Or you can do this. You know, you have to be careful not to screw up the solder trace though and lift it up on you. I was lucky. I made a razor blade slice, and literally it broke right in half. So that was kind of good for that. Actually, you can almost kind of see that the stud is almost not touching anything. So, you know, however you wanted to do it, but this kind of works here. Luckily, there's enough room in the back of the cluster area for this to go right here. So anyway, that's kind of all you really have to do to make this work. Other than that, that's it for now. We'll see you later. Bye.